Hi, this is Monica Spirit Walker with Weaving Traditions, and today we are going to be talking about working with our ancestors. This is really something that was put upon me by my ancestors that I needed to share with you guys to give you somewhat of an understanding, especially from my perspective, of what it means to work with them and some of the things that you'll experience. Now, this is really probably just the first video that I'm going to put out about ancestor work. So, welcome to the maiden voyage of working with your ancestors. One of the things that I have found is that once you choose to connect with your ancestors, once you begin or become more open with the idea of having an ancestor altar or looking into your ancestry, you really become a beacon for your ancestors on the other side. It's kind of like Carol Ann because they want to guide you, they want to protect, they want to show you a better way of doing things. They want to help you achieve the things that you are supposed to achieve in life and the path that you should be on. And they can't do that if you're not open to hearing from them or even acknowledging that they exist or even asking for any kind of assistance from them. So, first thing you need to understand is that once you become open to this fact that, this is what I want to do, I want to reconnect with my ancestors, I want to create an altar and put my people's pictures up there, you become a beacon to them. It's your way of letting them know that I am in an opening stage, or I am open, or I am, starting to take the steps to getting to a place where having a connection and a conversation and a relationship with you is something that you're interested in doing and something that you really want to do. Now, I know for a lot of people it is, especially if you're in the beginning stages, it can be really difficult because of mainstream religion has made venerating your ancestors a taboo. They view it as a worship. I want to clarify for you now so that you can find a peace in doing this practice is that you are not worshiping your ancestors as you would the divine. This is not the same thing. What you are doing is venerating them. Veneration is a form of respect. It is the same as if they were alive standing in front of you, how you would respond and deal with them. If you wanted to talk to them, if they were to come and guide you. So you were not doing any holy worship type thing where, you would for a creator. That's not what this ancestral work is about. This is not what having an ancestor altar is for. All right, so let's just take that out of the mix. This is not a worship situation. This is you venerating. This is respecting. This is honoring your ancestral connection and your ancestors. It's it's important. It's important that we remember our ancestors. It's important that they feel like they are remembered because, and I know you've seen Coco, but I knew about this before Coco came out, is that you die two deaths. You don't die just once. You die from your physical body and you become energy, you become spirit. You become I don't want to call you a ghost because a ghost is more of a haunting, but you become an ancestor. And we keep them alive in so many different ways. And that's the sharing of our stories about them, that's remembering their birthdays, that's talking to them, that's taking their favorite food or drink to their grave. Several different cultures have wonderful ways of venerating and remembering and honoring their ancestors. And that second death is when we forget about them completely, when they are no longer relevant to us because we have, and this is something I've heard people say, we have evolved past that. in my humble opinion, we have not evolved beyond the people who came before us so that we can forget them. We stand on their shoulders and they raise us up to the next level. They guide us and help maneuver and help ease the way. And if we are having issues communicating with the divine, they will step in and be the arbitrator for us. They will pass the message on when we can't do it ourselves. And just to give you an example of that, in my journeys, I had to do some really deep digging. And I found out that as much as I am a love God, rah rah cheerleader, spirit is this, spirit is great. I had from childhood into adulthood into my conversion to Judaism this very thick, dense black ball of anger that I had buried so deep within myself that I didn't know it existed, and it was in the way. So what my guys did was bring that to the surface. Well, in doing that, for me to actually have to deal with it, it made me angry, and I couldn't do my morning ritual of talking to spirit. I just couldn't. I couldn't talk to him. I couldn't talk to Shekinah. I couldn't even talk to the angels. Anything related to him, her, them, I couldn't do it because I was so angry. And so instead, what I found I had to do was to speak to my ancestors, and say, hey, this is what's going on. I want to keep my connection, but right now I'm so angry, I just can't speak for myself. So I'm going to speak to you. And if you would, pass that message on for me. I'm not in a place where I can nurture or maintain or even begin to look at a relationship with the divine, but I can look at that relationship with my ancestors because it's like me talking to my mom. And when your parents and your family was alive, they had no problem praying for you and doing all this other stuff to intercede for you to make things better. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about veneration and having that connection and how they can be the ones who step in to help soothe and smooth the way or pass messages back and forth. And you can ask your ancestors to work with other ancestors in your family line or other people's ancestors to clear the way for things. All right. So we're moving on to talk about the ancestors you're working with. What ancestors are you working with when you say, I am open to doing ancestral work? Well, let's talk about a couple things. The majority of us, when we say ancestors, we automatically go for the ones who look like us in the mirror. So you'll see a lot of African Americans working with their African ancestry. You'll see people from China or Japan, and they'll be working obviously with whatever that ancestry is. Well, here's the thing. For a lot of us, especially in the US, we are not one thing anymore. And when you say you're open, you become that beacon, you don't just become that beacon for one strand of your ancestry. You become the beacon for the whole damn kit and caboodle. So every ancestor that you have, no matter the lineage or the genetics that it flows through, you have become the beacon for them because there's work that needs to be done. There's work for healing. There's work for forgiveness. There's work to help you get things out of the way. And whether you like it or not, those ancestors from those other lines, if they're willing to help you, will step up. And sometimes they will step up before the ones that you say you want to work with even come into the picture. And that's okay. So in doing your ancestry work, don't be alarmed or surprised or even angry that you want to work with your African American ancestors, but this redhead Irish dude shows up, or this blonde haired blue eyed guy shows up. And yes, I know many of us are mixed due to forced sex and everything. And yes, we have lines that, We have ancestors that are not for our highest and best good, but we still have ancestors that are for our highest and best good. And sometimes they will step in and assist you. And one of the things you ask when you do this, when you put this into the universe, is that you want to work with the ancestors that are for your highest and best good, that are here to help support you. Because just in life and death, you have ancestors who don't want nothing to do with you and want to see, you fail. So you always work with the ones that are in good standing or in the highest and best good. Because some ancestors, when they go to the other side, they still have work they have to work through. And some of them have chosen to, stay in the spot they were when they were here. So just be aware. And sometimes they work against you for your best good. So don't be upset when, you call for help and you get the opposite of what you asked for. Sometimes they work against you when it is for your own best good. It's kind of like the thing about you ask God for something and you don't get it and you find out later that was probably the best thing that ever happened to you type of situation. When you're working with your ancestors, you should, again, as I said, define your line that you want to work with. If you already know that you are mixed with multiple, I'm going to use the word races, ethnic groups, ethnicities, you can choose to work with singular ones. You can choose to work with all of them. It really is, in essence, up to you to what path you want to take. But I ask you to be open to working with any that present themselves to you, just for the fact that I have found in my experience, sometimes when you just want to work with your African American ancestry or your Irish or your German and someone different shows up, you may not be ready to work with them. There may be things that you need to work on or work through that, or have assistance with, that particular ancestor that shows up can help you with. And I will use my life as an example. When I started, I think when I became more open, really, to the idea of the other side, the first ancestors that showed up for me were not African. They were Native American. And I was stunned, and I really wasn't sure how that worked because we'd always heard about it. But the thing about, oh, we always say we are, everybody says they got Native American and then they don't. So there was a question of that. And I was just like, okay. But then I ended up having Native American teachers. And so I walked that path and I worked, with the grandmothers and that ancestral line for a little bit. I think not as deeply as I should have, or maybe as I could have. And that's something that I plan on revisiting. But I found that because we were so disconnected lineage-wise due to slavery from Africa and that ancestral line there, that I actually needed to work with that Native American line in order to, say, I guess, close the gap or begin the healing to get me to a space where I was able to cross that gap, that time gap, that situational gap from slavery to actually back on the continent. And doing this helped me to connect and understand that the earth, regardless of where you are, what prayers and things you do with it, can reach back to the continent, wherever, whichever country, county, continent you come from. You can send those prayers back through the air, through the dirt, whatever. And that's what I had to do. So it was a healing process, and a process that allowed me to become more open, to get to a space where I was ready to approach those ancestors in the proper manner, because with all things, There are people who will deal with you hem-hawing. There are people who will not deal with you hem-hawing. There are ones who will snatch you up to get you to do right. And so for me, working with them was that, kind of, okay, she's kind of hem-hawed, but we'll get her right before she can step into dealing with the next set. I have had ancestors from the insanity of Vikings, and I'm just like, what in the world did that come from? But they came to me to help me, tighten up some in certain areas and get things together. That maybe I needed their assistance more than I did, you know, that ancestry, or maybe it just wasn't time for me to work with them. And so that became the case. So don't be surprised if you reach out to work with your African American ancestors or your African ancestors, and they look at you and say, no, you need to go work with him. Don't get mad and not do it. Take the breath and find out what it is you need to work on or work with, or why you need to work with that person. Now, let's see. DNA is a surprising thing. I went and got my DNA done, and I found, ironically enough, that we had mixed our Native American down to just, for mines, until they refined the testing, is at 2%. I have, it's Swedish and some other things that are, to me, just really itty bitty. But what I have come to understand is that just because your DNA is this much, they can sometimes be the loudest ones talking to you and working with you. So don't discount that 1% of whatever, because you think about it. In your family line, if you've got 7 generations of people who have not been open to working with the ancestors to try to heal or do any other, ancestral connection or remembering, and all of a sudden you come up and you're like, I'm ready to do this. I'm open for this. Like I said, you become a beacon to all of these ancestors who have been willing and waiting and wanting to work with their family line. Maybe some of them want to rectify what others screwed up. Maybe some of them want to, help make sure you move along a certain path or run interference for you. You just don't know. But you do know that because we've got, like I said, so many generations of people disconnected from it because it's been linked as a taboo or seen as pagan, and has created a great disconnect from who we are and the paths we travel in remembering our ancestors. You can be that one light that they all come running to because, oh my God, I get to talk to somebody. I get to help somebody. I get to correct some stuff. And we get to do, and they want that acknowledgement. I can tell you from experience doing ancestral work at my events and at my ceremonies, when we call on our ancestors, it has been a beautiful thing to see people who are just stepping into this have an ancestor reach out to them. And for many, it was ancestors that they had no idea even existed, and it gave them a need to go start doing research and looking into their family line. And it's one girl had someone that she knew of but didn't know anything about that reached out to her when it was opened up. And we were asking for those who wanted to come and guide, to work with us, to help us in certain situations. And these people stepped up. So this is one of the aspects of working with your ancestors that I wanted to bring to the forefront for you to think about. If you have any questions, please send them to me at weavingtraditions@gmail.com. You can leave them below this video if you like as well. I'm on Facebook and Instagram under Weaving Traditions, all right? I thank you guys so much for being here, and I hope to see you in my next video, and have a wonderful, wonderful week.